until the beef between GoldBod and the Minority Caucus, no, I intensive papa. I tremor as I bread here. Sammy Gyamfi and the Minority Caucus at War Parliament. Afenyo Markin GoldBod and Yasem Kitwa. So Bekayana and say me the Baba 2 when him say Minority Caucus nature say GoldBod or ask Sammy Gyamfi done. A Kebia air cost war, and Yasem Kitwa would drip and the Casas and no more cry as a driver beer, which is Sammy Gyamfi and no dear for $200 million or the approve. Na no na obekaya Sammy Gyamfi bae na odi ntetem bae sa ade na nya sa na ti o company bi e na ni GoldBod ye adwuma na sa company na obi afọ musika kọ na nya se onu Sammy Gyamfi ni GoldBod na o musika ayira na se PP fo obeka asem bi ama ye ntie na ebisa Sammy sa ade Sammy se MPP fo eni bre jealousy I ready pa wo mo wo ne ho no nya asem keto a nya se Sammy na ade o mani bre wa ye de na o musi hwe sa abayi ba ye odi GoldBod ba ye wo pe institution ba bi e ho de pa ye GoldBod no mo nti ase se wo no Sammy Gyamfi ene da ano enti no mo ye ne ho a wenchi sa no na se bi wo no ne hu so abrobe che se dream ba akokra ankapta ne ho enti ade a eye MPP fo ye nyina ye ni bre o kan sa ansem ni we ye nim se we ato ama we eto atwa ene ye da sori ya Minority Caucus Afenyo Markin za no se hine ne ha wakoye press conference chireche no ze me be chireze mu na ade ene wo se hwe ansema Sammy Gyamfi kan de di nkan o ka che Sammy Gyamfi amana ate azeze wono se bi oba o pe Sammy Gyamfi ntimi mfa se bi aduane obedie no Sammy Gyamfi ntimi ni enti ani bread e onyim film onani mmere no na emom ye se ade bi se ye no na ne yie mu a ye nti a omo bo ho pam ne sa ne se eye Ghana sika na Sammy Gyamfi da no enye se bi na busu apanyi bi ebra wa bo e na ode ama no so wontena so enti se bi sa ansensem fo ne kura de mo nka nkire wo na emom sem bi wo ho mo ba becheche omo press conference ne nsem ewuom na chen kure yenko ne ngoti press conference
GoldBod and the perils it poses to our country's economy. The caucus would like to make it very clear. We did not call you here to trade insults. We called you here because Ghanaians deserve the truth about GoldBod. Plain truth in plain language. And on behalf of the caucus, I would want to share with you something you've been waiting for. A week ago, the chief executive of GoldBod went on social media space. He said the concerns of the caucus come from bitterness. He called us bitter. He said he could hear hatred in our voice. But we have this to say to him and the institution he heads. We are concerned for our country, and there is the difference. The head of an institution accused of losing 22 billion Ghana cedis plus in 1 year should not be talking about our tone. He should be talking about his leisure. Ghanaians can see exactly where the weakness lies. According to the GoldBod, other voices can be taken seriously, not ours. But we want to make it clear. Nothing said by us is personal. Every figure we are about to give you comes from the IMF. It came from their own report on Ghana, published this very month. If IMF facts sound personal to the GoldBod and its officials, the problem is not ours. The problem is what the facts say. Government has not publicly objected to the findings in the report. Ladies and gentlemen, let me open this by setting the record straight, because 1.7 billion losses do not belong buried in a footnote. It belongs in the open, where the people who own it can see. And let us be clear about what that figure is. It is not accounting fiction. It is not a rounding error. It is a real loss generated from the activities of GoldBod, sitting on the books of Bank of Ghana, generated entirely by the gold purchasing and gold trading operations carried out by GoldBod, the sole institution Parliament mandated to buy, sell, weigh, grade, assay, value and export our gold. The IMF has already told the country where this loss comes from. In its own words, the losses, quote, are a combination of service and assay fees paid to GoldBod, discounts on gold sold to off-takers, into bracket exporters, and most importantly, exchange rate losses from the spread between Forex Bureau rate paid to purchase gold and the cedi reference rate used for BOG accounting, end quote. This can be found in paragraph 13 of the IMF report. This is not our characterization. That is the IMF's. And those involved in fact check can check. So here is a question GoldBod must answer. If every one of those service fees and assay fees were collected and kept, why should the losses that came bundled with earning them belong to someone else? You do not get to keep the fees and disown the costs. This is not accounting. That is convenience. And who exactly are these off-takers GoldBod sold discounted gold to? The country deserves an answer. GoldBod is happy to take credit for the foreign exchange it claims to have generated, but it goes quiet the moment we ask about the very trade, the discounted sales, the fee arrangement that produced that forex in the first place. You cannot claim the upside of a trade and disown its downside. And let us also be honest about where the real conversation lies. We, the minority, are not here to relegate the profit of GoldBod, the profit GoldBod has published it in its own account. We are here because what happened off the books, the operations, the fee structures, the discounted sales that made that profit possible in the first place. Substance must always be judged over form. GoldBod took Bank of Ghana's money to assay gold and collect its fees. It cannot claim the credit that comes with the revenue while pushing every loss into Bank of Ghana's balance sheet. This is precisely why Bank of Ghana has decided to stop GoldBod's gold purchasing operation going forward. The losses generated by GoldBod's own purchasing, pricing, and sales decision can no longer sit on the bank's books while GoldBod enjoys the credit. What we are witnessing is a disingenuous accounting arrangement, clean on the surface, dirty in substance, and it is ordinary Ghanaian taxpayer who is left carrying the risk. That ends today. We are asking straightforward questions, and we expect straightforward answers. Who are the off-takers? Why were sales discounted? And why is the mandate to trade gold on the country's behalf producing losses the country was never told about? Now, let me deal with the numbers Ghana cannot ignore. The IMF tells us that 17% of the value of every ounce of gold sold by the Bank of Ghana simply disappeared. It vanished into the gap between the rates paid to miners and the rate used for the books. Add the fees paid to the middlemen. Add the discounts handed to off-takers. This is not rounding error. This is not teething trouble. This is a structural bleeding of our national purse. And it was not the opposition that found it. I repeat, it was the IMF's own economists. And the government has accepted that indeed these losses are true. Now look at what this bleeding has done to our central bank. By the fund's own numbers, the Bank of Ghana's equity stood at negative 93.8 billion cedis at the end of last year. Negative 6.7% of GDP. Our central bank is technically bankrupt, therefore. And the single biggest driver of that collapse in the 2025 was gold operations, GoldBod. GoldBod's own domain, 22 billion cedis, That's equivalent of the 1.7 billion US dollars in 1 year alone. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, let's call it what it is. These losses are not bad luck. You don't trade in gold and make losses. They are not a difficult market. They expose the crass incompetence of GoldBod's management and misaligned policy of the government. No serious institution loses this much money by accident. This is what happens when an untouchable few are handed the nation's gold with no one watching and no one willing to ask questions. Ghanaians have already sacrificed much to keep this economy standing. We tighten our belt for the sake of stability. That is why it is so painful to watch this scheme quietly give away sums that will make any right-thinking citizens weep. We did not endure hardship so that billions could vanish into unexplained spread and unnamed off-takers. Let us be honest about what $1.7 billion actually means. It is hospitals that will not be built. It is needless maternal death that would not be prevented because the theaters, the blood banks, and the trained hands that could have saved a mother in labor were never funded. It is schools that will not be built. It is poor roads that will not be constructed. Roads that claim life every week. It is water treatment facilities that will not be constructed. Even as our people's water is poisoned by galamsey, this government has failed to control. Every one of these is Ghanaian life diminished by a loss that does not have to happen. Now let me emphasize that the latest IMF report, which is the IMF's sixth and final review of Ghana's extended credit facility program, completed on 10th of July 2026, concerning the financial consequences of the NDC government's domestic gold purchase program. According to the IMF, this domestic exchange program, which the Bank of Ghana accumulated gold and intermediated foreign exchange to the private sector, generated, for emphasis, 1.7 billion US dollars, which is the equivalent of 22 billion in 2025 alone. So you are looking at approximately 1.5% of Ghana's entire gross domestic product. And again, we are not ignorant. We are not speculating. We are not manufacturing allegation. It is not partisan interpretation. It is the finding reported by the IMF after examining Ghana's economic and financial program, and it demands honest answers. Let me have this. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, this is a summary of the IMF report. After the bulky report, they came out with this, which is the selected issues dated August 2026. International Monetary Fund, IMF Country Report number 26/213. Those who are doing fact check. And it says, International Monetary Fund, Washington, D.C. This has been accepted by government, and government is acting on the concerns raised by the IMF. And to those who are thinking that the GoldBod has not incurred any losses because they decided to use Bank of Ghana as its alter ego. When I say alter ego, what I mean is that you use another institution to carry all your burdens on your behalf. So you appear clean. So you can conveniently say that the Auditor General has gone through your books and you do not have losses. But the losses were incurred by you. So how can you record profit and the cost is not incurred by you? Who does this? Anyway, the IMF says that quote, in 2025, the significant scaling up of the domestic gold purchasing program operations led to losses of 1.67 billion US dollars, 1.5% of GDP, almost entirely related to the gold for reserve dot purchase. This amounted to a loss of 17% of the value of the dog gold sold by BOG. On whose behalf? GoldBod. This is here. It's here. It's there. Paragraph 13. Page 10. And ladies and gentlemen, we need to emphasize something. We, the minority, we work as a team. When the minority leader speaks, he speaks for the party. The party has a political committee we call the tripod. The flag bearer, who is the leader of our party, taking us to Jubilee, the party machinery, and parliament. These three units work together with a policy coordinating chair, my respected colleague Kojo Oponkruma. We coordinate and speak with one voice. It doesn't matter who speaks. So when a matter is raised on policy, a chief executive of an institution cannot choose and single the leader out for insults. In the minimum, the caucus knows it brief and will not speak and blow hot air. That is the report I've shown you. So now the Ghanaian people will see who is ignorant, who is doing mischief, who is lying to the public. We will not just come out and say anything because of partisan convenience. What is happening is bad. There is crisis ahead of us. Our friends must better listen and pay attention and not allow the IMF to rather come and talk to them before they listen. When things go bad in our country, it affects all of us. So we are here to hold their feet to the fire and make them accountable to the people of Ghana. We are not here to trade insults, and that must be clear to them. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, from the transactions arranged between GoldBod and Bank of Ghana, GoldBod was not an uninvolved spectator. It is the very institution with a statutory and operational mandate, as I've said, to buy, sell, weigh, grade, assay, value, and export gold and other precious minerals in Ghana. Therefore, the role GoldBod played in the transaction places significant responsibility on it because, one, GoldBod participated directly in buying, aggregating, assaying, and exporting the gold. Two, Bank of Ghana provided the financing. Three, GoldBod earned fees from the transactions. But when the program generated substantial financial losses, those losses were not reported on the balance sheet of GoldBod. What kind of voodoo accounting is this? Who does this? And then GoldBod wants us to believe that it has not made losses, it is clean, and wants to mislead the people of Ghana. No, that cannot be the truth. The arrangements made require much deeper scrutiny than government has so far been willing to provide. Ghanaians must also remember how this story developed. When initially the Fifth Review raised concerns about the gold program, the discussion centered around an estimated 214 million quasi-fiscal loss identified through the September 2025 report. The IMF explained that losses arose from the trading activities, fees, and exchange rate movement, and specifically called for greater transparency, governance, and risk management around the GoldBod linked channel of the domestic gold purchase program. We were subsequently told that GoldBod itself had made no loss However, Section 13 of IMF country report, as quoted supra, stated. The real question, therefore, is what did Ghana lose from the transaction? The IMF has now answered the question, which I've quoted supra, for the full year, an equivalent of 22 billion cedis. The Ghanaian taxpayer ultimately stands to lose on this. And now for emphasis and further explanation, the accounting location of a loss does not change its economic reality. This is perhaps the most important point that we, the caucus, want to put across. If GoldBod was legally an agent of Bank of Ghana, there may be a technical accounting basis for recognizing the underlying trade losses at the Bank of Ghana rather than recording them as GoldBod's own corporate losses. But Bank of Ghana is not interested only in which ledger the loss entered. We must ask, who designed the arrangement? Who approved it? Who executed it? Who controlled the risk? And why safeguards failed to prevent losses of this magnitude? An accounting structure cannot be used as a shield against public accountability. If one state institution is responsible for buying, aggregating, assaying, and exporting gold, while another state institution supplies the capital and bears virtually all of the downside, Parliament is entitled to ask whether the risk allocation itself was prudent. And we pose it, whether the risk allocation is prudent. In fact, the structure creates an obvious governance problem, where the entity carrying out the commercial activity receives fees based on transactions, while another institution bears the principal financial risk. Incentives can become dangerously misaligned. The institution making or influencing the operational decisions may enjoy the upside of increased volumes and fees without carrying an equivalent share of the downside when the transactions perform poorly. That is precisely why strong risk limits, independent oversight, transparent pricing rules, and clear accountability arrangements were indispensable. The 22 billion outcome raises serious questions about whether those protections were adequate.
And Afenyo Markin so and another room or the press conference no say GoldBod one on somewhere person and yasam get what na nientia Sammy Gyamfi nam ho a wodi oye mema asem ne say omo friends o mra parliament o na nko mo nya na put it to you a wo ba hwe na majority caucus no omo de omo 189 MPs no atwi afa so say oh no substance in the case na court rise no mo nyina sorry na no na memeti as me dwene ho say say asema Afenyo okay ye no credit ene ye was a minority caucus majority caucus mo ma kwan say Sammy Gyamfi no de nyina isika no na say boni bi nko so a say bi o premier de nko so ya ba say boni bi ansi mo mfre no no mra oba no obetirechem ne hu so za abroba so afa ne ho adi na nye saa enye saa Sammy ye no na tie o na no wase wuye eyie chenchire eyie mu VIP eyie we say heaven kra yenye bi wo hono mo wo small onye small boy wo koken ya di asembeba wo young man wo ba ya wa umeye MP ni ntu na abusuani bi amuda na abusuani ewuda ni ehu se wa ye yiza wo ba be ye yi CEO a hwe yi a wo ye ni nyina daache chema wuntumi na edem no ene ye ka chemo chema wuntumi na edem no mu pa MPP NDC for months 32 years said the tie bia the table 10 10 a afeni ye be bo akire ti se ne opani obo ni sika so no ni ahwe se nia uye no GoldBod boni bi ani ma na se boni wo mu de ene ene ujejirije aha ye info I will number 1 super duper host Ken Lakuta and I made the breakdown bro macro.